Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're charting the initial phase of, well, the most devastating conflict in modern memory, the origins and early stages of World War II.
It really is the hinge upon which the entire 20th century turned. And understanding that sequence of events is just crucial because you can trace nearly every modern geopolitical tension right back to this conflict.
So our mission today is to analyze the source material, the treaties, the economic disasters, the military innovations, all the things that lit the flame. We're going to track the story from 1919, right after World War I, up to the fall of France in 1940.
And this isn't a story about one single trigger moment. It's more like a series of dominoes, falling deliberately one after the other.
Precisely. To get the Second World War, you have to go back 20 years before it to a treaty that was meant to guarantee peace.
But, arguably it made the next war inevitable.
Okay, let's unpack this. We start in 1919, the Treaty of Versailles. And the key weapon used to hobble Germany was Article 231.
The war guilt clause.
Exactly. It legally forced Germany to accept total, absolute responsibility for causing World War I and all the damage.
And that guilt came with a truly staggering price tag. France and Britain, they were desperate to recover their own losses, so they ordered Germany to pay a fine of $33 billion.
Which, if you run the numbers today, is equivalent to what, about 270 billion?
Something like that. I mean, it was an impossible debt load.
And just to show you how long that shadow was, here's a fact that's pretty surprising. Germany made its final payment on that World War I fine in 2010.
Nearly 100 years later, it's incredible. The immediate fallout in Germany, though, was explosive. That economic strain led directly to crippling hyperinflation.
The German mark just became worthless.
Overnight, the numbers are hard to even comprehend.
I was looking at this, and in 1922, a loaf of bread cost 160 German marks.
Okay, 160.
By November of the very next year, 1923, that same loaf of bread, it cost 200 billion marks.
Billion. With a B. Your life savings, everything was just gone. The economy was paralyzed, mass unemployment everywhere.
And when a nation goes through that level of humiliation, that level of distress, it just creates a void.
It's the perfect entry point for radical ideologies. People are desperate. They're looking for a simple explanation and, a savior.
And that desperation, of course, is what allowed the rise of Adolf Hitler. He shows up as this young political operator who is just brilliant at leveraging public anger.
And his first coup attempt in 1923, it actually failed. But that failure, paradoxically, just made him more famous, more popular.
He seized on the humiliation of Versailles and he just redirected all that rage.
The propaganda was relentless, spreading this lie that Germany's problems weren't the war or the treaty, but anti-national elements inside their own borders.
Specifically blaming Jews and socialists.
Right, and they used this very specific conspiracy theory, something called Judeo-Bolshevism.
Can you break that down for our listeners?
Sure. It was this idea the Nazis pushed that claimed Jews were the real force behind the Russian Revolution in 1917, and that there were combined anti-Semitism with a deep fear of communism into one toxic narrative.
And just as things were maybe starting to stabilize, the global economy delivers another hammer blow.
The Great Depression, 1929.
Just worsened the unemployment catastrophe. By 1933, you have 6 million people out of work in Germany.
The democratic government, the Weimar Republic, was already so weak. The crisis made it totally ineffective. And this is where Hitler makes his move. He doesn't just declare himself dictator.
He uses the law to dismantle the law.
Exactly.
Yeah.
After the Reichstag fire in early 33, he uses the panic to push through the Enabling Act. That act let him, the chancellor, pass laws without parliament. Democracy was dissolved in a matter of months.
And his goal was clear. A racially cured German right for the Aryan race, which needed Lebensraum.
Living space.
All right, so this brings us to that period of, well, international inaction. From 35 to 38, when Hitler starts testing all the boundaries set by Versailles. And this is where it gets really interesting.
His first big open violation was military rearmament. In 1935, he just reveals he's built an air force, the Luftwaffe, which was strictly forbidden.
Now, you'd expect the Allies to just clamp down immediately, but they didn't. Why?
Well, the mood in Britain especially was that maybe the Versailles Treaty had been too harsh. There was a bit of a guilt complex. So instead of opposing him, Britain signed the Anglo-German Naval Agreement.
Which basically recognized his authority to build a navy. It sent a massive signal that, treaty violations would be tolerated.
It did. France, on the other hand, was terrified. Their response was purely defensive. They built the Maginot Line.
a 450-kilometer-long fortification on their eastern border.
Which was a catastrophic mistake in doctrine. It was an investment in static defense and fighting the last war. It gave them this illusion of safety.
But walls wouldn't stop him. In 1938, he engineers the Anschluss, the annexation of Austria.
And his method was brilliant in a terrifying way. He didn't just invade. He forced the Austrian chancellor to appoint pro-Nazi officials. When the chancellor tried to hold a vote for independence,
Hitler marched his army into Vienna.
instantly. And he used propaganda, flooding the news with fake stories of communist riots to justify it all. He claimed he was invited in to restore order.
With Austria secured, he immediately moves on Czechoslovakia, looking at the Sudetenland region.
Home to 3 million ethnic Germans, he used the protection of minorities as his justification for the next expansion.
And this leads us to the ultimate symbol of failed diplomacy, the Munich Agreement. September 1938, the British Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, he genuinely believed he could avoid war.
A policy of appeasement. He thought if he just gave Hitler the Sudetenland, he'd be satisfied. He was buying peace at any cost.
And that peace lasted all of 6 months.
In March 1939, Hitler just tears up the agreement. He invades the rest of Czechoslovakia, and the Allies finally realize appeasement was a total failure.
So his next target is Poland. But he has a huge strategic problem.
The two-front war. He can't fight the Western powers and the massive Soviet Union to his east at the same time.
So he makes maybe the most cynical move possible, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression agreement with Stalin's Soviet Union.
Which is stunning. His entire ideology was built on hating communism, but he shelved that for practical gain. The pact secretly agreed to partition Poland between them. It secured his eastern flank.
And on September 1st, 1939, almost 1 million German troops attack Poland. The UK and France issue an ultimatum, withdraw, or it's war.
Hitler ignored it. So Britain declares war, followed by the Allies. But for the Poles, it felt, well, it was called the phony war.
Right, because war was declared, but no real help came.
No meaningful support at all. Poland's army was outdated. Our sources mention them using cavalry, horses against tanks and machine guns. They were defeated in less than a week.
And the speed of that victory was the world's first look at Hitler's new doctrine, Blitzkrieg.
Lightning War, it was completely different. Earlier wars were about infantry holding lines. Blitzkrieg used fast-moving tank divisions, the Panzers.
Supported by the Luftwaffe from the air.
Exactly. To punch deep holes in enemy lines. They didn't stop. They just raced ahead, cutting off communication and supplies. The enemy couldn't react fast enough.
But to maintain that incredible speed, fighting 24/7, the human cost must have been enormous. How did they keep the soldiers going?
Well, this is one of the most shocking details from the source material. The German military was chemically fueling its soldiers. They were systematically given a drug called Pervitin.
And Pervitin is what we know today as crystal meth.
Exactly. It suppressed fatigue, eliminated the need for sleep, reduced pain, hunger, thirst. So you had defending forces who needed to rest, facing an army that was literally fighting day and night. It was a massive tactical advantage.
While all this is happening in the West, what's Stalin doing? He's supposed to be Hitler's ally.
Stalin was paranoid. He didn't trust Hitler at all, so he spends that winter fighting a war against Finland. Not to help Germany, but to push the Soviet border further away from Leningrad, a defensive buffer.
So Stalin is playing defense, and Hitler turns his attention to the rest of Western Europe. Denmark and Norway fall quickly in April 1940. Chamberlain resigns.
And Winston Churchill takes over as prime minister on May 10th, 1940. On that exact same day, Hitler launches his all-out war against the West, the Battle of France.
And France was still relying on its supposedly impenetrable Maginot Line.
Which was their catastrophe. Hitler knew they'd expect a frontal assault, so he used a smaller force, Group C, to attack the Maginot Line as a simple distraction.
Masterstroke was Group A.
The main tank force. The French military considered the Ardennes forest to be totally impassable for heavy vehicles, so it was barely guarded. Group A snuck 40,000 military vehicles right through it.
They came out behind the main Allied armies, trapping the best of the British and French forces in Belgium.
Suddenly, 400,000 Allied troops are stranded on the beaches near Dunkirk, facing complete annihilation. The war could have ended right there.
This is when Churchill launches Operation Dynamo, the biggest, most desperate evacuation in military history.
It's a miracle it worked. The Luftwaffe was bombing them, the German army was closing in, but the British Royal Air Force provided air cover and hundreds of civilian boats, fishing boats, yachts. They sailed across the channel to rescue the men.
And in 9 days, they evacuated nearly 350,000 soldiers. They saved the army.
But not the equipment. They had to abandon everything. All their tanks, their artillery, their trucks, left on the beaches. Stripped of their gear, the remaining French forces just couldn't hold on.
And France officially surrendered to Hitler on June 25, 1940.
So by July, let's look at the scoreboard. Hitler controls Austria, Poland, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and now France.
The upper hand is a massive understatement.
And it's so important to remember where the United States was in all this. They weren't involved. They were committed to isolationism after World War I. So for the forces fighting Hitler, it was a desperately bleak situation.
Which means the majority of Europe had fallen. Hitler had a peace pact with the Soviets. There was only one major fighter left standing.
Only Britain, isolated and facing the full force of the German war machine.
And in that moment of desperation, Churchill delivered those immortal words.
We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
That spirit was really the final defense. So for you to think about, considering Hitler's incredible success and the fact he had this non-aggression pact secured, with Britain standing all alone, ask yourself this. What fundamental assumption did Hitler make about the Soviet Union and Stalin that would ultimately determine whether he could truly defeat Britain and secure a final victory?
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the start of the Second World War.
We'll see you soon.